Hey guys, today we're going to take a look at one of my jobs I shot recently. If you follow my work, you know I am an event photographer. I focus on big corporate events and political events, but that doesn't mean I don't shoot portraits anymore. I shoot portraits for friends, long-term clients that I would hate to say no to, I would never want to. I really enjoy still photographing them, and I sometimes shoot weddings for friends. So what I'm going to do is show you your average portrait session. And what I want to do is I want to talk about how I go about shooting a portrait session, not just like logistically, but philosophically, because before I transitioned into shooting events, I did do portraits for about half my work. And I had a very specific system I followed in order to get the types of portraits I wanted. I'll show you guys right away. Let's take a look at the work. All right, so here we are. So Lauren here is like a cousin to me. She is my best friend's cousin, and so I really grew up with her, and she recently reached out to me and asked if I would photograph her wedding, and she wanted to get some engagement photos done. So the thing about engagement photos, guys, most people, you have to remember, are not models, and if you try to pose them, it won't work. It will feel very awkward and they will not feel like themselves. If you love someone, you don't need to be told how to hold their hand, how to kiss them, or anything. So what I believe the goal of the photographer is to capture something real. Before I even shot events, I always focused on capturing like natural moments. I hate fakeness. I have no interest in participating in the documentation of phoniness. Like, it's not my thing. So rather than posing people, I came up with more of a placement method, and it's not fancy. Really, all I would do is I would look for the light, I would find the composition, and then I would place my subjects, my couple, in that area where the lighting's working in their favor, where I can make interesting compositions, and I let them interact. Rather than tell them what to do, I simply say, I give suggestions like, oh, why don't you guys hold hands? And you don't need to tell them how to hold hands. It's ridiculous. So I know I went against the grain when I first started out, but I think the industry has moved along, and I think people are looking for these natural moments now. But it's really been, I'm not bragging, but it's always been what I have believed in. I mean, I think you guys can probably tell, like, I believe in this. I don't have an interest in phony stuff. So I want to share with you guys a little bit more about how I go about and get these natural moments. So back to the images. These are normal people, again. They really, and this is the first few shots. So there is a warm-up period. And often what I'll do is I will simply place my subjects in good lighting, and then tell them something like, hey, just ignore me. Pretend I'm not here. And I'll pretend even sometimes I'm messing around with my camera settings. I'm like, oh, I'm still, dialing it in here, whatever. And you just look for the moments. Here's a moment. Another moment. I don't know why I have both. I probably could have edited down further. But with editing, you're always making a trade between expediency and quality, and when in doubt, I mean, I think it'd be easy to say just give more, but at the same time I actually think it's better to edit down further, take the burden of having to kind of go through all these images off your client. But if you're really in doubt, if you really can't tell, it's not about laziness, if which image between two you should include, maybe there is something to both of them. So you guys can see here, I am just kind of wandering around. I'm letting them interact. Maybe I'm making a joke or two at most to keep things light. I didn't love how this shot turned out exactly, but I'm doing a lot of what I do in events. It's not that different. I'm interacting with them, but otherwise I'm doing the same kind of thing I would shoot at an event. So I'm shooting through things in order to get different, just to make it feel more candid. But let's keep going through these. You guys will notice they're both wearing black. Lauren's really cool and is planning on getting married in a black wedding dress, which I thought was awesome. You know, she is doing her own thing. So here, on a technical note, yes, that's not ideal, but I thought it was a good moment, and I don't let my perfectionism get in the way of about the value my client might find in an image. So I had no problem including that. Here you guys might be able to tell I'm shooting through some fencing. And so you have here a top, what would you call it? A slit on the top and then on the bottom. And I'm just trying to pull the eye in toward my subject matter from the top and the bottom. Basically, it's like adding a gradient similar to that. It's not, there's no gradient, but you get the idea. It's drawing the eye in. So again, I didn't pose any of these. I let them interact. Sometimes I captured a serious moment. Sometimes it's more reflective. I probably could have deleted that one, maybe. Other times it's a big smile. Mostly, though, I'm looking for those big, happy smiles. And then here and there, when I feel like they're comfortable, I'm like, hey, can you guys look over here for a second? I grab that shot, and then I go back to letting them interact. This was one of my favorites. I really liked this one as well. As I'm going through these, I do wish I edited down a little bit more. It's not that there are bad shots. Some are like, the moment's not quite there. It's more about I like to try to make sure each photograph offers something very unique, a unique moment. I don't want, like here, I probably could have just kept one where I find that to be a slightly better moment than that one. I don't remember why I kept both. Here, I just wanted to experiment. I didn't love how it came out, but I wanted it to experiment with just trying different angles and shake it up a little bit. I would describe, if I were to describe my style, which I don't really like the usage of, I don't even like saying, oh, my style is this or my style is that, because I believe that when we talk about style, we're usually talking about an arbitrary aesthetic. And I'm not into that. I want my images to just look like photographs. I don't want them to look like very like a filter, like there's an Instagram filter on it. So I'm mostly doing color, contrast, very basic stuff, sharpening. But compositionally, I tend to stay pretty safe by choice. Not because I'm limited creatively, but I think that you want to mix those creative choices in, but there's nothing wrong with going safe. You can't just go full bore on creativity where you're trying unconventional stuff. You want to have at least those conventional shots as your base, and then you can kind of add some stuff. Sometimes what I'll do is progressively I will get more creative. So just like when I'm shooting an event where I start off with maybe a 24-70 and I get some basic group shots, and then I'll like eventually end the night. Back in the day, I don't have a fisheye anymore, but back in the day, I'd end the night with a fisheye lens. So I wasn't starting with the fisheye lens. And so when I'm shooting portraits, I'm not starting with the really creative artsy stuff. I'm keeping it pretty traditional. So let's keep going through these. So here, when I shoot engagement sessions, I always like to get some standard headshots. There's nothing wrong with that. Sometimes there are professionals and can use a good professional looking headshot, but it's also just for the other person. So, people want a nice photograph of their significant other, and they don't need to be in every shot together. Maybe it's a shot for their desk at work. It doesn't matter. I don't know. So again, it's not impossible to get natural portraits of someone who really doesn't want to be photographed. It's not impossible. The goal is to just keep it light, keep it fun, and don't pose. I am telling you guys, if you start to pose people, they instantly clam up. They don't like it. They don't feel comfortable. Then there's all this judgment. Do I feel like I look natural? Do I feel like I look relaxed? So they're going to become very self-conscious. But let me tell you guys, if you're lost in the moment with your significant other, you're not going to get self-conscious. Maybe to some degree, but nowhere near as much as if you're being posed. It's kind of like me being in front of the camera. I can't stand it. I get very unnatural. I'm getting better at it, I think. But when I'm teaching my students out in class, I'm not really worried about how I'm perceived or whatever. So, same thing. Find a nice wall with good lighting. It's a lot of color casting from the red barn, which isn't ideal. I love moments like that. All right, so let's skip ahead. See, if you guys actually, real quick, look here. Each of these moments is pretty distinct. That's a very similar shot. So I converted one to black and white. All right, let's jump ahead a little bit. So now you guys can see I'm trying a little bit, I'm getting a little bit more creative. I'm trying some different stuff, different croppings, getting really intimate. I wouldn't start with the intimate shots. I really think the best type of shot to start with is like finding a nice spot. And like I said, you pretend you're just playing around, or you say, hey guys, just ignore me. And you might not get something right away. It might take them a while to relax and really feel like they can be themselves. And you need to be patient. If they feel like you're in a rush, they're not going to get comfortable. Let's keep going through these. Some cute moments. I've talked about this before on my channel. One of the best ways to get really natural portraits or just fun, candid, is when you're photographing people. It's back up and you're having them look at you. Your standard formal, let's call it. Have them look at each other and they will always crack up and maybe even give each other a kiss if they are romantic. But even like the groomsmen, you know, the groom and groomsmen, it's a great technique to use. Have them look at each other. Here I saw some lighting I thought I could use. Basically, we have direct sunlight hitting a white wall to my right. It's kind of like a slither. It's not a lot. And so it's giving me kind of like a strip box light effect from camera right that drapes across her. It's a very flattering type of diffused light. The trick here is having her stand back enough where the direct sun coming from the left isn't hitting her. So she's kind of in an overhang, like a doorway. And it's just hitting to her right, and then it's a beautiful effect. Let's jump ahead a little bit more. I'm thinking about maybe doing some of these live where you guys can actually ask me questions about how I've gone about to, like, maybe some of the technical stuff that I'm not thinking of telling you while I'm going through it right now. I really like that portrait of him. So again, you can see it's a natural moment. She's just adjusting his shirt, or she found some lint, and what I did is I found the light, I knew where I wanted to be, and I let them interact with each other. It's so simple. Now, I remember when I first started as a photographer, I'm sure things were a bit different then than they are now. That's a great one. When I started, everyone was very concerned, maybe they still are, with blog posts. It was a tactic to get your work out there where you would basically do a photo shoot and then submit it to a blog, and often they were staged, and you had vendors that were supplying you with flowers and whatever, and you were plugging them in the blog post and that kind of thing. And it was very common then, when I would talk to other photographers, to use a shot list in order to get all the shots they want, like the shots. And I think that's a very stale way to go about working. These are unique people. your creativity should be creative. It should come from inside you. It shouldn't be, well, I'm a monkey going through a shot list. Do you really want to work that way? And what you would end up with is like a lot of really like, here's a shot of them holding hands this way, then that way, the guy in front, the girl in front, that kind of thing. And also you have to remember that type of like something intended for a blog post. It was also there to promote the vendor, and you would end up with a lot of detail shots of like the rings and the flowers. And do you guys really think that, I mean, it's appreciated by the couple? Like maybe they want a shot of a ring and all that. Of course, yeah. But do they want 90% of their images to be of like details? And it goes for a wedding too. And maybe this sounds crazy to you guys watching now, but when I started, this is what it was all about, all these wedding blogs. And there was one photographer, and I won't name her name, but a big photographer that really blew up because they knew how to promote themselves. And I recall that I started keeping tabs on her work, and I would notice how many detail shots there were in all of her blog posts. And once I counted, and there were 90 detail shots out of 120 images. I did, just back to the image, I don't love the composition here. I think it's a nice image, but it's just compositionally not really doing too much for me. I want to jump ahead. I'm sure there are a lot of nice shots in there. This is the kind of shot I used to do. I haven't done an engagement shoot in so long. I'm like, you know what? I'll do some of the stuff I used to do because, like, I wanted to, kicks for myself. I'm like, back when I used to kind of follow shot lists and I had some go-tos, and I thought, okay, I'll try them out. So this is one of the go-tos I used to use. I'd have guy out front, girl behind, but they're not my favorite of all of the work you guys are seeing. Here, again, now I'm starting to try some different stuff. I really love, by the way, how the black and white work came out due to like they were wearing black and getting like her eyes were just beautiful in black and white. When processing black and white, I adhere to sort of your traditional style of black and white, going back to Ansel Adams, where I'm sort of trying to follow a zone system, but not entirely. Mostly, I do avoid letting my blacks go to pure black. Most of these images were hardly edited. It was just your basic color, contrast, etc. All right, so another spot, we're getting more and more casual and just letting them enjoy the day. Not to over hammer it into your head, but it's all about having a natural moment, capturing something natural, and like that's a beautiful moment between them. I don't need to rely on fancy compositions. I don't need to like bring in fancy lighting setups. I used to, because I liked to play, but now I keep it simple. Like I don't even bring, I have reflectors in my car, but I don't even bring them out. I mean, maybe if I feel like I need to. And don't get me wrong, like if I had an assistant with me, I would go ahead and probably use a reflector. But I don't need it. You want to be a good enough photographer to get by with less. And think of it as you want to be able to get a good base coat without needing anything. And then if you do want to use reflectors, lights, it's like you're adding to it. You know, I really liked how everything turned out. Here I'm going for like a zigzag, if you guys see that. And so I kind of want it to draw your eye throughout the scene. It's getting a little bit warmer, so now we're approaching that golden hour. Now, I want to address that because if you're new to shooting portraits, you might ask yourself, when is the best time to shoot? And often people will say an overcast day, or they will say a day in which, or magic hour, golden hour. And I don't disagree with them that those are good days to shoot. but they're more limited days to shoot. I actually made a video on this, like 2 people saw it. But when you have a lot of sun, especially if you're willing to use reflectors, you have more options to reflect it, etc. You can add directional light. You can find interesting overhangs that have an abundance of light. Whereas on an overcast day, it's not that no matter what angle you photograph someone from, like, it will all look the same, but it's hard to get it wrong. It's really easy when you just have a lot of soft, even light. That said, again, the direction you're shooting in does matter unless the sun is directly above you. And golden hour is beautiful, I agree, but you're gonna have pretty much one look. I like to start my sessions a bit, like a couple of hours before then, maybe an hour and a half. It depends on how long you have with the client. But yeah, so here we're getting a beautiful backlit golden hour kind of shot for you technophiles or whatever you would call them. That is with my 135 millimeter at f2 lens. Shooting through things, getting these natural moments. Maybe, I don't recall, I prompted them to kiss, but I'm not going to tell them how to kiss. Here, I didn't prompt them. They're just naturally getting these moments. One thing I really love is capturing moments of people, especially in my street photography. Candids that almost look like a portrait, and portraits that look like candids. I try to like really straddle the line between the two. Here you guys can see we have like a sort of this really green fog, and that's actually a foreground element. So I'm shooting through something here. I don't recall what it was, and it's creating that kind of ethereal look. I do like that. Okay, nearing the end here. Okay. So I have a few final thoughts for you guys. So yeah, this is what an average portrait session looks like for me. I've always cared about real people and giving them real photographs, meaning images I knew would resonate with them. Getting just a bunch of like hero shots, those look cool and they make a cool portfolio, but ultimately I don't think those are the shots that people are gonna love. Like when they get that one shot, they're like, wow, but ultimately they end up framing the shots that make them feel something. They want it to bring them back to how good that day was, how much they love that person captured in an image. I think that sometimes it's hard being a professional photographer. You're doing something creative for someone else, and it's not exactly the same as creating for yourself. But I've had people that have years later told me what my work has made them feel, especially when loved ones have passed away and then they have these images that you were able to capture for them. That's actually one of the best things I've ever heard from people. And it makes me feel like, okay, I'm actually doing something that has an impact, even if it's small, because I chose professional photography because I love professional photography more than anything. I love to create more than anything, but I couldn't have a 9-to-5. I hated it. I hated every 9-to-5 I've ever had, or even part-time job. But sometimes this starts to feel like a job. But when people tell you how meaningful your work is to them, it really brings your spirits up. So that's it. Please feel free to ask me questions. I hope this helped. I'll keep making these. I'm always looking at your guys' feedback. It matters a lot to me because I made the channel to help people. Also, I need to get better at plugging myself. It's not my primary reason why I do this, but I should try to make this sustainable. And if you want to keep help me keep my channel active and all that, you can become a Patreon. But not everyone has money. Not everyone has money in very uncertain times that we're in right now. So if you actually know a photographer that you think would benefit from my work, I think that would make me happier than anything. Just send my work along to them. I'm talking a lot now, but I started off without a mentor. I didn't have anyone to really rely on when I started, and I want to be able to offer that to people starting out because it was rough. It's not an easy gig. That is the theme of my channel. I want to be real with you guys. All right, I'll see you guys soon.